Trump, a violent mob stormed the Capitol in an attempt to change the results of a free and fair presidential election. In the process, 138 Capitol and DC police officers were injured. A Capitol police officer was bludgeoned to death, and 2 more Capitol police officers died by suicide in the days that followed. Many of us in this room nearly died. Can you please treat what happened with the seriousness that it deserves? That is all I ask of my Republican colleagues. This resolution of inquiry is an absurdity, and it makes a mockery of people who sacrificed so much for us and for this country on January 6th. Would you please stop choosing Donald Trump over the American people? Liz Cheney, who until recently, until you kicked her out, was the chair of the House GOP caucus, recently shared a story from her experience on January 6th. In the cloakroom that day, one of the Republican members signing up to object to the 2020 presidential election results muttered out loud, "The things we do for the orange Jesus."
Would the gentleman yield for a question?
1 second. This loyalty to orange Jesus, Mr. Bishop, is going to ruin our democracy. And more innocent lives are going to be lost in the process if you guys keep this up. It is not too late to join House Democrats in honoring our oath to the Constitution. And yeah, I will yield to you.
Forgive me, I wasn't listening. We were conversing a bit. But did I hear, and I think, did you say that a police officer was bludgeoned to death by the crowd at the January 6 riots?
I said a police officer was bludgeoned to death. I did not say at the hands of whom, Mr. Bishop.
Who are you referring to, if you don't mind saying?
I can get that information for you in a few minutes.
Well, I just want to make sure, because
are you denying that that at least one Capitol police officer was murdered in the midst of what happened on January 6th?
Yeah, I think I am denying. I mean, here's what I understood, that there were reports early on that Sicknick was struck with a fire extinguisher, and that subsequently was debunked as false. He died of natural causes that were not connected to the event. Are we talking about the same person, Sicknick, or are we talking about somebody else? Seriously, I mean,
it's a genuine question, because the medical examiner, the U.S. Capitol Police put out a report agreeing with the medical examiner finding the USCP officer Brian Sicknick died of natural
Bishop,
causes.
well, just an initial thought, and I know that Mr. Roy, you too are an attorney. Mr. Bishop speaks often about how brilliant of an attorney he is. You know, we're talking about but-for causation of Officer Sicknick's death, and so I would hope that you would at least concede, at a minimum, that Mr. Sicknick died as a result of what happened on January 6th. And I'm disappointed if you would suggest otherwise, sir.
Well, I mean, look, I don't think that's correct either, but just, was he bludgeoned to death? Is that, because I think Ms. Demings was even looking at, we were sotto voce between me and her saying he was. I'm sincere as I can be. My understanding is that was debunked, and Mr. Roy just read the medical examiner's information. Do you guys contend that he was bludgeoned to death?
I contend that 138 Capitol and DC police officers were injured, and that multiple Capitol police officers died as a direct result of what happened on January 6th. And I hope that you—
It's your time. You don't have to answer.
I hope you can see how one would question the sincerity of such a minute point in the midst of the gravity of everything else.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yeah.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman for Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I will say this, Mr. Ray, I am one of those sheriffs that will be very blunt with you today. That's right here. I've had an opportunity to look at your testimony, lots of stuff, and hear about numerous task forces, crimes being committed against children, including even infants and toddlers. MS-13 gang members coming across the open southern border, the poisoning and killing of the American people with fentanyl, the sex trafficking, the human trafficking. It's quite clear, it is clear that you guys are dealing with some of the sickest bastards in our society. I have an article here from CNN in January 2022 calling the January 6th investigation the biggest investigation in FBI history. And what shocks me about this, quite honestly, is that you don't mention January 6th. Again, the biggest investigation, not one time in your 14-page testimony. You don't mention it one time. And that makes me ask myself the question, what the hell are you hiding? Sir, you mentioned 38,000 agents and support personnel in your agency. How many FBI agents and support personnel had you assigned to the January 6th investigation?
I don't know that I know the number. I know we have a lot of people working on it in
lots
multiple
then,
field
fair
offices.
enough, lots.
Yeah.
Knowing that you are dealing with some of the sickest people in our society with investigations related to child sex trafficking, have you reassigned any of these agents or personnel to investigate January 6th? Yes or no?
I don't believe we have reassigned people away from child exploitation to January 6th.
Now, let me just say this, Director. I find that answer disturbing because last month, Steve Friend, he testified before the Weaponization Committee. Mr. Friend was a domestic terrorism investigator for you, and he was told by one of his superiors that January 6th was, I quote, a higher priority than pursuing child pornography cases, end quote. And for those of you watching in America, understand today's FBI is more concerned about searching for and arresting Grandma and Grandpa for entering the Capitol building that day than pursuing the sick individuals in our society who prey on our children. And Mr. Ray, your priorities are flawed. But let's rehash what we know so far, all right? It's the largest investigation in FBI history, and you don't mention it in your testimony. Agents have been reassigned from child exploitation cases and so on. So now let's get into the money, Mr. Ray. How much taxpayer money has been spent on January 6th?
I don't know that I have the figure
you don't have
in
it?
my
Okay,
head,
fine.
but
Mr. Ray, I got an article here, December 22, 2022, 2 years after the events of January 6th, and it says the Justice Department has requested another $34 million from Congress. And number one, you shouldn't get another dime. The FBI shouldn't get another dime for this political witch hunt against the greatest president in my lifetime, Donald J. Trump. I want to turn my attention now to this fella, this character, Mr. Ray Epps. We've all heard of him. We've heard of Mr. Ray Epps. He was number 16 on your FBI most wanted list. He was encouraging people the night prior and the day of to go into the Capitol. And Mr. Ray Epps can be seen at the first breach of Capitol grounds at approximately 12:50 p.m. Play the clip, please.
We need to go into the Capitol.
Into the Capitol.
Into the Capitol. What? We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction. Please spread the word.
All right, noted. Okay, but one more thing.
Yeah, so can we go up there? No?
When we go in,
Are we going to get arrested if we go up there?
Yeah, you don't need to get
Just
shot.
arrest us.
There he is, breaching the line, going in at the first breach into the Capitol grounds, a restricted area. Mr. Ray, you have arrested hundreds of people related to January 6th. And there have been people arrested for breaching Capitol grounds. Cooey Griffin is an example. Rachel Genko is an example. And then we go to Mr. Brandon Strecka. Brandon was arrested for disorderly and disruptive conduct, which included yelling, I quote, "Go, go, go," as rioters tried to empty the Capitol. These three never went into the Capitol. They never assaulted anyone. So let's be honest with each other. There is very little difference between the actions of Ray Epps and Brandon Strecka that day, but yet Strecka was arrested and Epps wasn't. Epps also testified to the January 6th committee. He was back at his hotel when video evidence showed that he wasn't. He lied. He was on the Capitol grounds just as Brandon Strecka was. Epps even texted his nephew at 2:12 p.m. and said, I quote, "I was in the front with a few others." It was on the video. "I also orchestrated it." Now look into the camera, sir, when you answer my next question. Are you going to arrest Mr. Epps, yes or no?
I'm not going to engage here in a discussion about individual people who are or are not going to be prosecuted.
Can I get a commitment? You just watched the video. I'm an old law dog. I understand a little bit about probable cause. He did very little. There was very little difference what he did and Mr. Strecka. You can see him. He's encouraging, I almost think he's inciting a riot. He's encouraging people the night prior to go into the Capitol, the day of, go into the Capitol, and he was at the first breach, and he breached the restricted area. Everybody, a lot of people getting arrested for not going into the Capitol, but they're in the restricted area, but yet, Ray Epps, who many people feel, fed, right? And there's a lot of clout over this. So my point is this. You arrested a lot of folks for unlawful activity. You just saw the video. And I will tell you, Mr. Ray, if you don't arrest Mr. Epps, there's a reason behind it. I believe you know what it is. And it appears to me you are protecting this guy. I strongly recommend you get your house back in order. With that, I yield back.
I think the gentleman yields back. Director, we appreciate those. The whole country does. In fact, I said this in an interview this morning, a TV interview this morning. Two of those agents who served for years in the FBI, did great work, now work for the committee on the Republican staff. And we appreciate the work they did then, the work they're doing now. But they share the same concerns raised by members of the committee. That's why they came to work for us. So I just got a couple other questions. Any of the FBI personnel who did improper queries of the 702 database, have any of those individuals lost their clearance?
Like empires, prices rise and fall.
Well, depends on how far back you want to go in time. We've had individuals, if you go back to say like 2018, I think was the last I remember, where you had somebody who engaged in intentional conduct and the person, for example, is gone. I think there were security clearances revoked for people back in that time period, but I don't know that we've had somebody who's engaged in intentional or reckless conduct more recently than that. We have, as you may know, Mr. Chairman, and this actually didn't come up today, but it's important for people to know. We recently put in place a whole new set of accountability policies specifically focused on 702 that go through cascading consequences.
Yep.
And so that's an important
It's been reported
piece.
that donors of a congressional member of Congress were illegally searched. Has that individual lost their clearance?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with the specific example. So,
well, it's been widely reported that the donor base for a member of Congress has been searched, and I just wonder if the person responsible for that has had any consequences, like a loss of a security clearance.
I don't know the answer.
Okay. Is the FBI assisting the Secret Service in the investigation as to how cocaine wound up at the White House?
Yes, I want to be a little bit careful about what I can say here because the Secret Service is leading the investigation. But as is standard in an investigation where white powder is found, the FBI's lab personnel did an evaluation to determine whether or not there was a sort of biological.
Is that the only assistance?
That's the only assistance we've done so far. We have offered the full range of our assistance to the Secret Service. If they want to use us for that purpose. But beyond that, I would refer you to the Secret Service.
Is that offer's been denied? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't say that. We've offered it to the Secret Service, but beyond that, I would refer to them.
In October of 2020, when Facebook asked the FBI, is the Biden laptop story Russian disinformation? The FBI's answer was no comment. Who gave that answer?
And before you answer, sir, if I might just interject the fact that we agreed that I would have 2 questions and you would have 2 questions.
I think I said a couple questions.
Yeah. And you've asked a couple.
In fact, I know I said a couple questions, but I gave you 5 minutes,
But I'll.
Do you want another question?
No, I want us to conclude this hearing, and I respect
we will be
your
done in
prerogative
2 minutes
as the
and
chair.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. And we obviously appreciate the director being here. In October 2020, when Facebook asked FBI, is the Biden laptop story Russian disinformation? The FBI's response was no comment. Do you know who gave that response?
I did not.
The court knew, and the court said it was Laura Demlow. Do you know who Laura Demlow is?
I do know who Laura Demlow is.
And what does she do?
Laura Demlow is an agent in our counterintelligence division, and she currently works with the Foreign Influence Task Force.
Doesn't she head the Foreign Influence Task Force?
I think she leads it, yeah.
She leads the Foreign Influence Task Force. Did you tell her to give that comment?
Did I what now?
Did you instruct anyone, when Facebook asked, did you instruct them to give the no comment?
I don't remember giving any instruction along those lines, although I should say I'm not sure whether Laura Demlow was in that role at the time frame that you described, but
Again, the court in Louisiana said she was, and said when Facebook asked her specifically, she said no comment. And this is the Foreign Influence Task Force leader, Foreign Influence Task Force that you created as director of the FBI, correct?
I'm sorry.
All that's correct. You created the Foreign Influence Task Force.
I did create the Foreign Influence
Yeah,
Task
you put that
Force.
together, and she heads it up. Okay. When did you become, how did you become aware of the Catholic memo? The one in Richmond that we talked about a couple times today.
As I recall, in one of my regular morning meetings, I learned that there was this product, and that was the same day that I ordered that it be removed.
Was that before or after it was already in the press?
That I can't tell you. My guess is it was probably around the same time, but I don't know.
Did you learn about it? Did the people who brought it up to you, did they learn about it from the press, or was it some internal communication?